It's Thursday, May 5th, and you're scoping out Pete Montfrey Tells the Truth. Every Thursday, we jump on LinkedIn Live and we tell the truth about marketing, specifically business-to-business marketing. We work with service companies primarily. If you're selling intangible goods or services, then this podcast will be especially good for you. My goal really is to demystify marketing, shine a bright light into the black box that the marketing industry has become, and help you make better decisions about your marketing, and maybe not get taken to the cleaners by some of the folks in this industry. Today's topic is a quote from the ancient Chinese warlord Sun Tzu, who says, "Tactics before strategy is the noise before defeat." A pretty harsh assessment, but I think it's more relevant than ever, and I think it's kind of interesting that, how many centuries old that quote is, and how relevant it is to today. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from here. I talk to companies week in and week out, from all over the U.S., in different parts of the world, and I hear the same things. I hear the same things over and over and over again. And what has really struck me lately is that, and what I mean lately, I think since maybe 2014, but is that when people think of marketing, what they really are thinking of is tactics. And there doesn't seem to be the knowledge of the difference between tactics and strategy seems to be sort of a lost art for some reason. I think I have some reasons why. I'll be sharing those in today's episode. But this is really important because, I've been in continually running my marketing agency for 30 years. It's 3 decades, and if you can imagine, starting before computers and then all the way up to today, the amount of change that we've seen is hard to fathom sometimes. But it is an industry completely uprooted, and the biggest thing is that there is a massive amount of dissatisfaction with marketing. In fact, a recent study, I believe by Gartner, came out and said that 89% of marketing people were unhappy with their marketing investment. They're spending money on something called marketing, and they weren't happy. Okay, to me, that is a massive fire in an industry. I mean, that is a sign of an industry in decline. But the ideas are not in decline. It's not that marketing is passé. Marketing is more important than ever. I think it's the way that you go about making marketing decisions that makes all the difference in the world. And we see this over and over again. And we've done studies on this. And in fact, if you're interested in the latest study that we did, where we studied almost 100 different marketing programs to figure out what their points of failure were, shoot me a direct message and I'll send you the PDF on the reasons why marketing fails. And this is the number one thing, and that is that they put the cart before the horse. They focus on tactics instead of strategy. And so I had a friend many years ago who also owned an agency back in Milwaukee, and Matt and I would, his name was Matt Schultz, and he and I would often get into conversations about kind of what's going on in the business and some of the issues and that sort of thing. And we weren't old back then, so we were young and we were still complaining to the sky. But he said something that has always stuck with me, and that he said, "Look, companies, people, executives, they don't want to eat their vegetables. Okay, nobody wants to eat their vegetables. Everybody wants to eat their dessert first. Dessert being the sexy stuff of marketing, right? The SEO and building that new cool ass website, right? And all of the different tactics surrounding marketing, but nobody wants to eat their vegetables, which would be the strategy part, the planning part. And that's the piece that's missing. And if you look at, think about how you go to market. Let's say you have a company that is doing a few million up to 10 million, 150 million. Actually, we've seen this problem in very, very large companies as well, where they're they believe they have a strategy, and what it really is, it's a list of activities. Okay, it's a list of projects, a list of tactics. And so in a minute here we'll get into the difference there if it's not clear to you. But tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And so what Sun Tzu is really saying there, that if you put the cart before the horse, you're going to be defeated. And then the opposite of that, he also says strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. So you can have all the strategy in the world, and if you don't have the tactics to implement that strategy, again, it's interesting, he doesn't say that it's failure, but it's the slowest route to victory. I think that's interesting. I'm not sure what the difference is there, and I guess in today's world, without the tactics, you're really not going anywhere. You really need a combination of both, but more importantly, as you start to make decisions like, should we be on Facebook, or should we do pay-per-click, or should we do email, or should we do some sort of, that's when you should stop and put that aside. That's the cart. You want to put the horse in front of the cart. All right. And so what is strategy? So there's one definition. There's many different definitions. I like this one. Marketing strategy is a process that can allow an organization to concentrate its limited resources on the greatest opportunities to increase sales and achieve a sustainable competitive advantage. Okay. Boy, that's a pretty good definition. I think it leaves out another side effect of working on your strategy first, is that it lowers your risk. Okay, so you're going to spend some amount of money, some companies in the millions and millions of dollars, going to market. And by skipping the crucial decision-making process that is marketing strategy, you're basically taking on an enormous amount of risk, and having a plan can reduce the risk. Now, as soon as I say plan, people have this idea of what I'm talking about, and they think it's this static, big, giant federal case of a plan that maybe people did in the 80s. I don't know. But today's plan is a flexible, lean, agile type of plan. The market's always changing. Your plan should always be changing. And so in a way, the planning never ends. If you think about it, it's a continual loop of setting a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, and adjusting as you go. But before you get into the testing of hypotheses, you need to build the laboratory first. And I also liken it to an architectural plan. If you were going to build a house, you wouldn't just start making a list of the tools that you need. You start with a blueprint, and that's where it all begins. And if you can imagine trying to build a house without a blueprint, you can imagine. But this is exactly what companies are doing, and they're risking tens of millions of dollars doing it, and they're unhappy by and large. And so why is that? One reason I think is that one of the most significant environmental factors is the shift to digital marketing. After the execution of campaigns has become more and more complex, right? Marketers are under constant pressure to understand and manage more and more moving pieces, often at a pretty granular level. Here, and I have this little graphic here. And this is Gartner's illustration of marketing and marketing tactics, and all of this stuff are really tactics. And you see the little green strategy down at the bottom center there. This little part, it's funny on this chart, the chart is all huge and the strategy is real tiny. And I think that's just a great illustration of kind of what's going on. And this level of complexity wasn't really even there 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It's gotten to be a very complex endeavor. So imagine approaching this, like these are like all of your options, without any sort of organized strategic decision-making process. So when I say plan, another word that's just flogged to death, I think that's lost all meaning. But what I'm really talking about, any kind of planning is a deliberate decision-making process, if you think about it. So are you making deliberate decisions about how you go to market? And on what are you basing those decisions? Are you guessing, right? Maybe, I don't know. I see a lot of guessing going on. Now, I work with companies to help them not guess. I don't get paid to guess. We don't guess. We use data, research, and we have a deliberate way of helping clients make decisions. And that is really what marketing is. But the rise of digital marketing, I think, has really got us focused on executing a continually broadening set of initiatives or projects, from social and content creation, SEO, search engine marketing, into the CRM plays into this, mobile localization, native advertising. All of that is necessary and good, except it's replacing strategic thinking. And that's where you're going wrong. So if you're thinking about your marketing right now, and you're like, I don't like the direction it's going, you think about how you arrived at your strategy. Did you have a deliberate process? Or was it, hey, this is very common. In fact, I just talked to an $80 million company, and I was asking them questions about what they've been doing so far. Why do you want to talk to me? And they said, well, we tried some SEO, and this was a B2B company, right? And they have a digital agency, and the digital agency apparently recommended SEO. Now, for a B2B company, I would have to think very carefully about investing any money in SEO, but they did, and surprisingly or not, didn't really work that well. They said they also tried some LinkedIn advertising, and that didn't work either. And I said, well, do you have a plan? Do you have a written plan as far as what you want to get out of your marketing, what the objective is, who the customers are, etc.? And they said, well, sure we do. We have a plan. And I said, but is it a written plan? No, it's in my head. Okay. And so here's this team that's scattered all over the globe, but the plan is in the big boss's head. Okay. So you can imagine how hard that is going to be to execute. And what they were really doing is they were just trying stuff to see what works. Okay. Think about that for a minute. If you woke up on an operating table and you heard the doctor say, we should try a few things to see what works, you probably wouldn't be too keen on that. But that is exactly what's happening for so many companies. And why do I care? I mean, why would I care? Sometimes I'm this guy, really, and should I care? Well, I do care, because the clients that hire me expect results to happen. And so I'll just be straight up. If you're not willing to do a plan, I can't help you. You're not going to get there. Doesn't matter how brilliant I am, how brilliant you are, how great your product is. The marketing landscape, here it is again, extremely complex. All right. And so you want to dive into this without giving it some forethought? Knock yourself out. I won't be joining you. This is a cartoon I found that I thought was pretty funny. I don't know what's wrong. We posted our brand of lug nut to every social media site, and no one is talking about us. Well, it must be a technical error. Well, we do have 5 fans. That's the 5 of us. Ask for a refund. So I think that's just really funny in a tragic, sort of sad way. And think about it. Are you doing it this way? Another place that you see this is sort of this explosion of how-to guides, 7 steps for doing this, 4 ways to use, the ultimate guide to, these kinds of things, step-by-step prescriptions. It sort of makes marketing a connect the dots kind of exercise. In fact, I've seen digital campaigns and digital plans that are literally lines and squares. And all that's fine. It's just a question of, how did you arrive at those? How do you know that those are the right things to do that are going to bring you the results that you get? And I think CEOs, a lot of CEOs are very good at dealing with risk, and they see marketing as sort of inherently risky. And it's because the way they've done it all along has been very, very risky. So they think, well, that's just the way it is. Well, I have news for you. There is a way to have a predictive model of what's going to happen, and it can be very, very close to reality. but you have to do it before you start buying websites and spending money on Facebook and doing all these kinds of things. I saw an article in I'll call it a leading media and advertising publication that I won't name, and that should be obvious why in a minute. They proposed the following elements for most companies for your plan: a company statement, goals, target audience, key competitors, tactics, channels, content, conversion funnel, metrics. Okay, pretty good list, just missing a couple things. And it was, I think the article was something about how to create a killer marketing strategy, right? But there's only one thing missing. Where's the killer strategy? There's no strategy in there. There's no strategy component. There's also a couple other big things missing. Voice of customer. One of the most important things of that planning process that's often gets skipped is talking to your customers. And we can all chuckle at that and go, well, that's dumb. And then we think about, when's the last time we talked to our customers? I have done over 1,000 marketing plans for companies over the years. And I'm going to admit something right here, live on LinkedIn for everyone. I think every other one, I think to myself, is this going to be the assignment that the first one that I haven't been able to solve? And then I realize, if I stick with the process and I talk to those customers, I'm going to find the answer. If I can only do one type of research, I'm going to do customer research every time. That's where all the answers are. Now, the other thing that's missing, now it did say key competitors, but it doesn't have an external competitive intelligence module there. So again, 3 big things missing: customer research, competitive intelligence, and strategy. So really surprised to see that in a major magazine, but I think it's a thing that's happening. So digital marketing consultant Jeff Sauer, he says call it the ethos of the modern digital marketer, or call it youthful ignorance, but there's very little thought given to the strategies behind most digital marketing efforts. Most efforts employ a spray and pray or ready, fire, aim approach. They throw shit on the wall and see if it sticks. Ouch. Does that sound like what you're doing? If that's your approach, let's try this. The other one I see all the time is, let's start small. We're going to start really small. And if it works, then we're going to do more. Here's the problem. There's a paradox there. Starting small doesn't work. It doesn't get, small begets small, right? And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. But the reason they want to start small is because they perceive a lot of risk. But what if I told you that you could predict what's going to work and what's not going to work, and when you're going to see a return on investment, how much that return on investment is, that there's a way to do that, and it's kind of as old as the hills, but it just has fallen out of favor, okay? Because companies are into short-term gains. They just don't have time for that. And by the way, if you're doing it right, it shouldn't really take a lot of time at all. Sometimes we get these things done 30 days, 60 days, start seeing results in 90 days, okay? So I think there's a lot of perceptions around it that aren't exactly accurate. And it's a do first rather than think first mindset. I think another reason is many, many agencies, I would say the vast majority of agencies, they don't get paid to think, they get paid to do, okay? So there's a built-in incentive for them to do those tactics and not swim upstream and say, hey, really we should have some sort of deliberate decision-making process in place. In other words, we're not asking why, we're just asking what. Okay, so start with why, remember that? Why is strategy. So anyway, let me see if we have any comments. We do this show every week, but we did take a couple weeks off, and so out visiting my mom in the fabulous Rocky Mountains, and so we took a little bit of time off of our LinkedIn live program, which, by the way, we do every Thursday at 11, except for the last 2 weeks, but every Thursday, generally 11 o'clock Central Time, U.S., and we talk about things that matter when it comes to marketing. So, if you think about it, how many strategies are really have become kind of just a bottom-up accumulation of activity plans, right? For the, how do we use Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, programmatic buying, tactical advertising? It goes on and on like this, and it doesn't pass the why test. Why is the company in its position in the category? Why do customers relate to us the way they do? Why do our competitors attract people we don't? Why do we think what we plan to do will make a difference? Why are these sets of activities important? The result usually is kind of a second-rate, very inefficient, and less effective marketing. The chances of arriving at an optimal strategy doing it this way is if you've heard of the what is it called, the infinite monkey theorem, and that states that an unlimited number of monkeys hitting keys at random on typewriter keyboards for an infinite amount of time will almost surely type a given text, such as the complete works of Shakespeare. That is the infinite monkey theorem. And I feel like that old man screaming at the cloud. But I think this is really important, especially if you've spent the last few years pouring money out of your checking account on various different marketing tactics and it's not delivering a clear return on investment. Maybe think about how you're going about making those decisions. I always think of marketing like chess, where it's chess has kind of been regarded as sort of the ultimate strategy game. Every move has consequences. It needs to be successful, you need a core skill of strategic thinking, the ability to sort of look ahead and reason backwards. Even though there's only 6 types of chess pieces, it's been calculated that after each player has made 3 moves, there are over 9 million possible combinations of positions that the pieces can be in. And so the movement of just one piece can change the entire dynamic of a game by recalibrating the relationship of all the other pieces to each other. And if you recall, when we look at this this chart here, you can see the interdependence of all these different things. And so it just would seem to me that it would be nuts or incredibly risky to jump into a marketing program for a company in this day and age without some kind of plan, and some sort of thinking ahead of time, and making sure that you're answering all the why questions. But it just happens all the time. And I think of another friend of mine, Steve, who's a stuntman, and I remember going and visiting Steve, and his face was all scratched up, and he had some bandages on, and I said, Steve, a rough day at the office? He said, yeah, we had to roll this semi, and we didn't get the tape quite right on the window, on the windshield, and we had to roll it 4 times. And that's the moment I realized that Steve has a much different risk tolerance than I do, or maybe that you do, all right? And so because I'm in the business of helping companies be successful with their marketing, I'm not a big fan of taking risk with other people's money. And so that's why we have a certain way of figuring out what's wrong and how to fix it, all right? And that's strategy. And that's really what the missing link, I think, to 99% of marketing failures and sales failures, by the way. All of this can apply to sales as well. A sales plan, right? Some sort of strategy going in. What is our sales strategy? What is our marketing strategy? What's the answer to the question why? And so, ignore this at your own peril. Even thousands of years ago, Sun Tzu, he already had figured it out. And that book, and I think most people are familiar with The Art of War. most of these marketing terms come from the military: strategy, campaign, tactics, right? All of these are military terms. And so there's another great analogy there. So he's really talking about winning wars. But if you think about it, today's warfare happens in the marketplace, and you're going to win or you're going to lose. Most of the time you're in a fog, right? The fog of war, and you don't know if you're winning or losing. If you don't know if you're winning or losing, you probably don't have a plan. And I hate to say this stuff because everybody hates it. Nobody wants to do planning. That's no fun. Let's talk about colors. Let's talk about, flashy things. What's the new thing that we're gonna get all wrapped around the spokes on? That's fun. That's the dessert. We all want to eat the dessert first. Nobody wants to eat their vegetables first. Well, like Matt Schultz told me, you got to eat your vegetables first. I'm sorry if you don't like that. But if you want to be successful, if you want to get that money back that you're putting out there in the form of a marketing return on investment, MROI, you're just not going to get there unless you put a little work and thought up front, put off those puerile instincts to just surge forward and do stuff, attack. All right? Have a plan of attack. Do some research. The big pieces of research, I think there's three crucial types of research that you should be doing, even if it's just a little bit of research. Because if you're, let's say you've bought my argument and you're saying, hey, you know what, you're right, that makes sense, we probably ought to be doing planning, we're not doing a very good job at that. There's still a flaw that will catch up with you, and that is, if you do your planning in a closed room with your team and nobody else from outside the company, it's going to be full of your own confirmation bias. So it's crucial, and even Peter Drucker missed this in his, Peter Drucker lays out the marketing process pretty well in one of his early books, and I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Marketing Strategy. But interestingly, he leaves out external data. So the three types that I think are crucially important in order of importance: customer feedback, voice of customer research. Second one, competitive intelligence. Know what your competitors are doing, what they're saying, how sophisticated they are. We actually have a process where we compare you and 4 of your top competitors on the same 20 weighted factors, and it measures how sophisticated they are, where they're a threat, where you're a threat, where they're weak, where you're weak, and how to exploit those weaknesses and be stronger. And it's not a big deal. It takes about a week. But it's just crucial so that you can make the best decisions that you can before you start spending the big money on implementing the strategy, right? Because the expenditure gets exponentially larger as soon as you go to market, as opposed to we say, hey, take 10% of your marketing budget and just invest that in planning, okay? You're going to end up getting a much, much larger return if you approach that with some thought and with a solid process. And, one of the things that I hear a lot, and I hear this from people that are looking to hire us or to get some help, but they're not ready. They're not ready yet. We have a lot of things to figure out before we bring you in. And years ago, I started asking the question, and I said, well, what kinds of things you need to figure out? And it came down to, well, we need to solve all of our marketing problems so that we can tell the marketing people what to do, right? My response is, then you probably don't have the right marketing people. If you need to tell your marketing people, your marketing team, your marketing agency what to do, okay, they're not working at a strategic level. They're just taking orders. They're like the pharmacist, not the doctor, right? The doctor, you go in, you do your research on WebMD, and you're like, Doc, I'm sure I have cancer, I'm positive. And the doctor pretty much ignores you, right? He's going to start his process, and he's going to start with tapping on your gut and listening to your lungs and asking you dumb questions. At least you think they're dumb. He's going through a diagnostic process, and you defer to him because of his expertise, and you listen. Contrast that with the pharmacist, right? The pharmacist got the prescription. You're like, hey, yeah, that's me. And then gives you the prescription. Just taking an order, giving the order. Is that what your agency's doing? Is that what your marketing team's doing? Are they just taking orders? We need a new website. Great. let's call a web development firm. Hey, web development guys, we need a new website. Great, let's write that up. I'll just get my iPad out and we'll write that up. You know, how often do you think it happens where that web development firm, who makes its money developing websites, says, I appreciate that you think you need a website, but can I ask you a few questions? How do you know that the website is the thing that's going to make the difference? What are you trying to achieve? What's driving the decision to build the website? How many do you think are going to throw that roadblock up? I would say almost none, right? They're more interested in taking your money than solving your problem. And so these are things that we run into as an agency all the time. They are frustrating for us, frustrating for our clients. I think the big one for me is thinking you have to solve all of your problems before bringing in a strategy guy, right? I make a living and have for 3 decades facilitating teams to solve problems. And so the best part of it is you don't have to solve your problems before getting some help. We have a way of working with teams that's been proven over and over again that rapidly solves problems in a systematic way so that you can kind of take your eyes off the road for a few minutes. You don't have to solve all your problems before solving all your problems. But I always liked that when Matt put that nobody likes to eat their vegetables. And if you want to be healthy, you want to have a healthy return on your marketing investment, you want to have a healthy company, you want to have a healthy life, man, you got to eat your vegetables. There's just no getting around it. But I hope you'll join us here. I usually do about a half hour, 45 minutes. We have a guest next week who runs an agency, Kana. I'm not sure how she pronounces her name. And I don't have her last name written down, but I just met her, and I think she's extraordinary, and we were talking about these issues. And so it'll be really great to hear another marketer's perspective on this next Thursday at 11 o'clock Central. And hey, if you're in Austin, Texas, I'll throw this out there. Once a month, we meet with a bunch of business people down at the Saxon Pub, which is a pretty famous little roadhouse. And Lavolsi, Kana Lavolsi, is my guest next Thursday. Thank you, Heidi. I could not remember that for the life of me. But once a month, and I think the next one is May 28th, Saxon Pub, 6 p.m. We're going to play a little music. We're going to do some networking. We're going to hang out at a absolutely historic, iconic venue here in Austin, Texas. So if you're in town, come by and say hi, and then join us every Thursday for Tell the Truth. We'll see you next time. I hope this was good for you. It was good for me.
Tell the truth. Now you know that I love you. Now don't you tell the truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Just like a fat man trying to reach his shoe. I'm frustrated 'cause I'm trying to get to you.